Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Carly Sicali.
On today's show, Tennessee bans drag shows before kids.
Meanwhile, we take a look at CPAC 2023.
That we do, and disgraced lawyer Alex Murdaugh is found guilty of murder. All right, happy Friday, everyone. Let's start off with this, the latest update to the January 6th legal saga. Department of Justice attorneys say President Donald Trump can be sued over the Capitol riot. Trump is facing lawsuits from Democratic lawmakers and Capitol Police accusing him of incitement. The former president, though, claims immunity. Trump says he was acting in his official capacity as president when he spoke to a crowd of supporters only hours before the riot. For some context here, the Supreme Court ruled decades ago that a president cannot be sued for official actions. But last year, a district judge said Trump is not immune from lawsuits in this case, calling his speech the essence of civil conspiracy. Trump's legal team appealed that ruling, and the DOJ now says that to the appeals court that Trump would not be protected in cases of incitement. The attorneys clarified, though, they are not saying whether or not Trump is guilty of incitement in this case, though.
And in a quick update to the East Palestine situation, President Biden is urging Congress to pass a bipartisan railway safety bill in the wake of last month's train derailment. The bill would add new safety requirements for trains carrying hazardous materials. Biden applauded several items in the bill, such as decreasing the distance between temperature detectors to every 10 miles. The bill also calls for greater fines for companies that violate safety rules. Meanwhile, Biden says he plans to visit East Palestine at some point.
Elsewhere, conservatives saw a major win in the culture war this week. Tennessee became the first state yesterday to ban drag shows in public where they might be seen by kids. The ban builds on the state's existing restrictions for adult-oriented businesses. The new law makes it illegal to hold an adult cabaret performance in places where a child might be present. Now, this includes virtually all sexual performances and not just drag shows, by the way. Repeat offenders could face felony charges as well. The bill comes with the rise of drag queen story hours at libraries across the country. Several other states are also working on similar bans. Meanwhile, Tennessee is also joining other Republican states in banning transgender treatments for children. This includes cross-sex hormones and transgender surgeries.
In similar news, legislation called the Protecting Minors from Medical Malpractice Act is being introduced by Senator Tom Cotton. It would allow adults who receive gender transition surgeries as children to sue and would specify that federal law cannot be used to force medical practitioners into performing such surgeries. Cotton's bill underscores the profound divide between Republicans and Democrats on the issue of gender transitions. Liberals in the state of Washington are working to declare their state a sanctuary for gender transition surgeries. One bill, which passed the state Senate Wednesday, would allow individuals or shelters to provide housing to minors who run away from home. They wouldn't be required to notify the minor's parents so long as there is a compelling reason to not do so, such as a young person who is seeking placement in a host home to receive protected health care services. Critics of the proposed law say that it will encourage children to run away from home.
I can certainly see that being a worry with that law, so
Sure.
That is scary. Elsewhere, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade last summer, the battle over the abortion pill mifepristone has taken center stage. The FDA is now facing dueling lawsuits, one for and the other against the drug. This week, I got the chance to speak with preborn executive director Roxy Lamorgese about what these lawsuits mean in the fight for life. Say worse comes to worse and the FDA sides with the pro-abortionists here. What exactly would change, and how do you think pro-lifers would need to respond to this?
I think we already are seeing this because right now it's 56% of abortion is accounted for from the abortion pill. And we see the country becoming a checkerboard yet once again following Roe v. Wade. And then you have those battleground states. So it is not something new. It just makes it more prevalent. It just makes it more dangerous because you now have a lot of women accessing something that could be very dangerous and yet without proper education. This is not only talking about the abortion pill being dispersed, it's also talking about how young ladies 12 and over can actually make decisions about their reproductive health without parental consent. Now, we don't let them drive, we don't let them vote, we don't let them do a lot of things because their brains are not yet fully formed, right, to make appropriate decision. Yet they're going to start making these decisions without parental consent or guidance, and that could get very dangerous. I actually do not know what they're going to do because we have this REMS that's been going on for a few years. We've seen the documentation of the adverse effect that's actually published by the FDA. We know that they know the adverse effects, the side effects is listed. It is in black box, but we've also seen decisions where the restrictions have been repealed in some states, especially during the trial of the tellabortion.org and the forwarding of mail-in abortion to homes. I do know this medically, from a medical standpoint, it doesn't make sense why you would repeal those things, because if abortion is a true medical procedure, right, whether the pill or the actual surgical abortion, it won't be any different than you walking into the hospital and you needing a procedure. You will not be able to step in there without proper assessment, without proper informed consent, without being told exactly what it is that you need, without being counseled that you have to actually be of sound mind before you could even have any procedure. So for me, it doesn't make sense. If it's a true medical procedure like you claim it is, then you should stick to it becoming a true medical process.
Now, that was just a small part of our interview. You can watch the full thing on FISMnews.tv.
And a new report from Protect the Public Trust revealed that public school unions get concierge-like service from the Department of Education, while parents continue to be viewed as a lower priority. The report explained that the Biden administration gives parents vastly inequitable treatment compared to the school unions. They cited the fact that education department officials and select school union representatives were in contact with each other sometimes as many as 2 times per week. Michael Chamberlain, the director of Protect the Public Trust, explained that the documents reveal what everyone already knew, and that the teachers' unions are driving the Department of Education bus. And now we're going to head into our first break, but when we come back, we're going to look more at what's going on in Congress and at CPAC.
I'm involved with a pro-life clinic, and we do ultrasounds weekly. And last week, just one example of a mom who came in was very abortion-minded, and when she saw the picture of her baby on ultrasound and saw that beating heart, it was a defining moment that just broke her, and she said, I just can't allow this baby to be killed, were her own words. And then we were able to share the gospel. Sometimes we were able to give out a Bible if they're open and just minister to her the truth, the scientific truth, and God's love.
Would you join us and Preborn in the fight against abortion? Give right now by dialing pound 250 and saying that keyword baby. Your gift will help change the mind and heart of a mother considering an abortion. Pick up that phone again. Donate by dialing pound 250 and saying the keyword baby.
From the very beginning, you are the greatest teacher your child will ever know. You teach them to choose their friends carefully and to guard their eyes, their hearts, and minds against what could harm them. Everything you invest into your children will determine how they will go on to serve the kingdom. Every choice matters, and you teach them that their choices matter as well. But are we leading them to be good stewards of the blessings they've been given? We all want what is best for our kids, and as Christians, we know that to teach our children about the value of how they spend their time and their money is simply one of the most practical ways of applying biblical principles to their daily lives. Here at Timothy Plan, we filter and focus our investments on companies that maintain pro-life and pro-family values. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Contact Timothy Plan or your financial professional for a prospectus containing this and other valuable information. Please read it carefully. Distributed by Timothy Partners, LTD, member FINRA.
Welcome back to FISM News. I'm Carly Sicali. Multiple congressional members are under investigation for ethics violations, according to recent announcements. The House Ethics Committee will determine if Representative George Santos engaged in unlawful activity with respect to his 2022 congressional campaign, failed to properly disclose required information on statements filed with the House, violated federal conflict of interest laws, and engaged in sexual misconduct. Meanwhile, Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Cori Bush are also being investigated. The House Office of Congressional Ethics will determine if Ocasio-Cortez violated House rules on receiving gifts with her 2021 Met Gala appearance. Bush is being looked at for paying her husband $60,000 for security services.
Meanwhile, conservatives are flocking to Maryland this week for CPAC 2023. FISM's Ian Patrick is here with some of the highlights.
Let's look at some of the latest news from CPAC 2023, where 3 Republican senators gave speeches on Thursday in which they targeted different political figures. Let's start off with Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, who started his speech wanting to talk about what he said the truth is. Whereas his speech last year was focused much more on his beliefs, this year he hammered into the failures of the Biden administration.
The truth is, I do not hate anyone. I do not hate anyone. I look for grace wherever I can find it. So I say this gently. The Biden administration sucks. You measure it any way you want. COVID, the economy, inflation, the national debt, the border, crime, cancel culture, treating parents like domestic terrorists, Afghanistan, our energy independence. President Biden has been spectacularly awful.
His tongue-in-cheek way of speaking elicited laughter as he continued coming up with examples of how the Biden administration could continue to be embarrassing.
If you put President Biden in charge of the Sahara Desert, he would run out of sand. If the aliens landed in Washington, D.C. tomorrow and said, "Take me to your leader," it would be embarrassing.
Soon afterwards, the CPAC crowd was treated to a speech from Florida Senator Rick Scott. The senator used a good part of his speech to go after Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, whom Scott challenged for the leadership position in the new Congress.
Old establishment leaders from our own Republican Party caved in and gave the Democrats the votes to nail down victory after victory and pass dangerous left-wing policy. And that's why last fall I committed the unpardonable sin in Washington. I challenged Mitch McConnell to be the leader of the Senate. My belief is that my challenge to Senator McConnell was not the end of something, it was the beginning of something.
The goal for Scott in his speech was to whittle away at the legacy Republicans like McConnell, whom he and other Republicans say have acquiesced too often to the left.
Some people who say they're on our side aren't going to like what I'm about to tell you. It's not just the Democrats in Washington who are destroying our country. You've heard the famous quote, "We have met the enemy and he is us." Unfortunately, some of the leaders of our old Republican establishment, they've been in Washington way too long, they've forgotten why they came here. They've gotten used to caving into the Democrats. They do it over and over and over.
And much later on in the day, the recently sworn-in Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt took the podium to air grievances against the national response to COVID-19. In particular, he took a commonly agreed-upon stance that is shared among many, if not all, conservatives, which is that there needs to be accountability for former NIAID Director Dr. Anthony Fauci. Schmitt added his own mix to the discussion as he brought in information from a deposition with the doctor. And although criticizing Fauci was the central theme of his speech, Schmitt's call to action was that Fauci, though bad, exemplified the importance of freedom of expression in the United States.
The takeaway from that deposition was, when Fauci speaks, big tech censored. And this can never happen again, and not on my watch.
CPAC 2023 now enters its third day today, and speeches and other events like this that have taken place are adding some concern to a claim that this year's conservative conference is seemingly nothing more than a pro-Trump mega rally. After all, Trump has feuded with all three topics of discussion in those aforementioned speeches, and many of their talking points are actually reflective of what Trump has said in the past. However, the two other current GOP presidential candidates for 2024, those being former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and anti-woke businessman Vivek Ramaswamy, will be in attendance at CPAC and are scheduled to speak. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks for that overview, Ian. Sam, I know Trump is slated to speak tomorrow, so that should be...
It's going to be fascinating what he has to say. I'm sure it will be very Trumpy either way, well, as he usually is.
Yes. All right, well, moving to more sober news, over in Ukraine, war crimes investigators have revealed a network of at least 20 torture chambers in the recently liberated southern Ukrainian region of Kherson. New evidence suggests the network was planned and directly financed by the Russian state. The mobile justice team, funded by Britain, the EU, and the U.S., has been working across Ukraine and in Kherson since it was reclaimed from Russian forces in November. The mobile team is supporting Ukraine's Office of the Prosecutor General as it reviews more than 71,000 reports of war crimes nationwide since the invasion. Moscow has continually denied committing war crimes or targeting civilians. The investigative team says funding a network of torture facilities was part of a Russian state plan to subjugate, re-educate, or kill Ukrainian civic leaders and ordinary dissenters.
Meanwhile, Christians in Canada continue to see their rights come under attack. A pastor in Alberta was arrested yesterday for protesting a drag queen story hour event at a local library. Video shared by Rebel News showed Pastor Derek Reamer being arrested. Take a look.
Is there a reason you're blocking me from using the sidewalk?
Obstruction, they're working here.
I'm not going to obstruct them. You mind if I ask you what he's being arrested for?
Are you going to provide your identification?
Pardon?
Will you provide your ID?
It's for you to answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is he being arrested?
He has warrants.
Warrants out for his arrest? Multiple, so that's two, I believe?
I don't know.
Okay, do you know what the warrants are for? Wow.
Last Saturday, Reamer protested the library drag event when police told him he would be arrested for mischief and causing a disturbance.
Can I just ask, if people want to help you, where do they go?
They can go and contact Rebel. They're providing me with a lawyer. This is what happens when we go against the drag.
Police are now seeing if Reamer can be charged with a hate crime.
And a Christian pastor in Uganda who was participating in a Christian-Muslim debate was severely beaten after his defense of the gospel led to 37 Muslims giving their lives to Jesus Christ. Pastor Arthur Asadi Bobby suffered a broken leg, fractured hand, and multiple other injuries after the assault. The 42-year-old Bible scholar was asked to participate in the debate by his colleague. The Christians were invited to the debate by the sheikh of a mosque in Uganda. They recalled that at the end of his defense, the pastor made an appeal for the response from the audience to believe in Christ. Surprisingly, 29 adults and 8 children gave their lives to Jesus, all Muslims. However, from nowhere, Muslims started throwing stones and then attacked him with sticks and clubs, including the new converts who had embraced the Christian faith.
Both examples of persecution and a good reminder, both different examples though, but a good reminder that we do need to be praying for our brothers and sisters around the world.
For sure.
All right, finally, to wrap up with this story, before we go to break, Israel is criticizing Brazil's decision to dock 2 Iranian warships. Now, both Israel and the U.S. are urging Brazilian President Lula da Silva to send them away. They docked in Rio de Janeiro on Saturday. Israel's foreign ministry called the docking a dangerous and regretful development. Back in the U.S., Senator Ted Cruz called for sanctions against Brazil, and he is asking the Biden administration to reevaluate Brazil's cooperation with U.S. anti-terrorism efforts. Cruz called the warships a direct threat to the safety and security of Americans. And we have plenty more news coming up next, but first, let's go to a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, in history, we often ignore the characters that come just before or just after the Titanic figures. But it's important that we don't forget these seemingly unimportant guys, because the less famous provide the fuller context for the more famous. Now, with all due respect to today's figure, he was not really all that famous for much, except for being the man to serve immediately before perhaps the most important president in American history. That would be Abraham Lincoln. This man was a Pennsylvanian who holds the title of the only bachelor to sit in the White House, the 15th President of the United States, James Buchanan. Now, like several of his predecessors in the antebellum United States, Buchanan was a relatively uninspiring commander-in-chief. Still, he served during perhaps the most tense and crucial time in the nation's history. Now, Buchanan was a lawyer early in life, and this gave him the foundation for entering politics. He traveled around the block quite a bit as a political figure, as a member of the House, a member of the Senate, and a foreign ambassador. Now, this resume made him eligible for candidacy in the 1856 election, which he won on the Democratic ticket. Now, Buchanan's failure to live up to the calling of the times is largely due to his futile attempt to appease both Northern and Southern interests. He disliked slavery, but when the shocking possibility of secession rose, he did not act like his successor Lincoln would, or even his predecessor Zachary Taylor had done. Where both of those men were willing to go to war to preserve the Union, Buchanan just kind of seemed content to trust in the goodwill of the states to not secede. In fact, he publicly said the states could not secede, but he did nothing to prevent it when South Carolina became the first state to leave the Union in 1860. Now, of course, by this time, the writing was on the wall in terms of the fate of the nation, at least immediately so. Now, Buchanan was ousted in favor of a much more popular Democratic candidate named Stephen Douglas, who would offer a serious challenge to Abraham Lincoln. Now, in the sovereignty of God, Lincoln was elected. Now, of course, Lincoln's election meant almost certain war, and so Buchanan finished out his days in the White House in a somewhat bleak fashion, having failed to come to a compromise to preserve the Union, and having lost his re-election chance in 1860, he turned the leadership over to Lincoln in 1861 as the nation was heading towards civil war. So Buchanan retired to his central Pennsylvania estate, where he spent the remainder of his life until his passing in 1869. Thanks so much for joining me once again for a moment in history.
Our faith and values shouldn't be compromised by the way we invest. Our faith and values that we share should guide us in the way that we invest. Make sure that you are investing in companies whose policies and practices align with pro-life, pro-family values. Visit thetimothyplan.com or call for more information. Advance the kingdom in the way that you invest.
Tragically, and all too often, a young mother in an unplanned pregnancy is in crisis. You can be there for her by giving a life-changing ultrasound through preborn. Seeing her baby on ultrasound is a game changer, doubling the chances she will choose life from 40% to 80%. For only $28 a month, less than $1 a day, you can show a mom her baby on ultrasound.
FISM News is a conservative news source with a biblical worldview. With us, you get just the news grounded in truth. And now, with the new FISM TV app, it's even easier to take FISM News with you wherever you go, so you're never behind on what's happening. Not only are FISM News articles updated regularly throughout the day, but you can now easily access and read them right from your smartphone. And with just a few taps, you can share stories with friends through messages, email, or social media.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. Let's start this segment off with this. A South Carolina jury delivered somber justice to a full courtroom yesterday. The jury found once influential attorney Richard Alex Murdaugh guilty of killing his wife and son. The panel deliberated for 3 hours before reaching their verdict. Murdaugh's lawyers immediately motioned for a mistrial, which the judge swiftly denied. The judge said the evidence of guilt is overwhelming in the case. Murdaugh had pleaded not guilty, but he later admitted to lying about his alibi and to financial crimes. Those lies hurt his credibility with the jury. Prosecutors said the murders were to distract from the millions of dollars he stole to feed his opioid addiction and support his expensive lifestyle. The inciting evidence came when Murdaugh changed his alibi after the jury listened to audio evidence that put him at the scene of the crime only minutes before the murders. Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison today.
Well, in some alarming news, new data shows children and newly enrolled college students are continuing to feel the effects of school closures during COVID-19 lockdown policies. Data from the Illinois State Board of Education, or ISPE, shows not a single student can do grade-level math in 53 different Illinois schools. Additionally, not a single student can read at grade level in 30 schools. Shockingly, ISBE rates many of these schools as commendable. Democratic Senator Willie Preston believes it can be turned around, but only with an effort from schools and parents.
It can get turned around if we, again, reappropriate dollars to the classrooms the right way, make certain that every teacher has a teacher's aide, for instance. We can reappropriate it if we start to ensure that we have children and that have parents that are able to actually have a stable home and not just have kids running around from place to place and not knowing where their next meal is coming from.
Yet funding doesn't seem to be the issue, as Chicago schools are spending over $35,000 per student. Meanwhile, according to the New York Post, nearly half of New York City's public school graduates are taking remedial classes to make it through their first semester at community colleges.
All right, shifting gears now to look at sports real quick. A college basketball player fell just short of breaking one of the most notable NCAA records yesterday. Detroit Mercy player Antoine Davis came 4 points shy of Pete Maravich's men's NCAA scoring record after scoring 22 points in a loss to Youngstown State. Davis needed 26 points to break the record. The five-year star had a chance to tie the game and the record with a three-pointer at the buzzer, but missed as time expired. Davis finished his career with 3,664 points in total. Maravich set the record, playing in 61 less games than Davis. After the game, though, Davis said he was thankful he was even close to the record, saying God knows what he's doing.
And in some religious news, as the fight rages on over transgenderism, one Missouri Christian college is taking steps to make sure its religious freedoms are protected. College of the Ozarks is asking the Supreme Court to reverse a lower court ruling that said the school could not sue the Biden administration over its LGBT housing policies. The policy forces schools to allow transgender students to live in dorms that match their identified gender. College of the Ozarks says the policy violates its religious beliefs. Alliance Defending Freedom is representing the school. It says the government can't strip a private faith-based institution of its constitutionally protected freedoms because it disagrees with its views about marriage and sexuality. Meanwhile, ADF is also asking people to sign a petition in support of the school's First Amendment rights.
And finally, to end on this rather interesting story, archaeologists are continuing to find hidden surprises from ancient Egypt. A hidden corridor 30 feet long was recently discovered in the 4,500-year-old Great Pyramid of Giza. Egyptian antiquities officials say this could lead to even more discoveries.
Today, we are announcing the results in this important project that has shown the presence of a corridor on the northern side of the Cheops pyramid. I would like to confirm that we will continue working and searching using technology and advanced scientific methods which are safe to uncover the secrets of ancient Egypt.
The discovery was made under the Scan Pyramids project, which since 2015 has been using non-invasive technology to peer inside the pyramid. The unfinished corridor was likely made to redistribute the pyramid's weight around either the main entrance or maybe another chamber inside. Either way, researchers say the discovery could help them better understand exactly how the pyramids were made. I don't know. So is it aliens or not? We still don't know.
Oh, good question.
I know. That is the real question we want to know. Yes, all right. Well, with that big question, that is our program for today. So thank you so much for joining us. And please visit our website. It's FISMnews.tv for more content over the weekend.
And for any updates until our next show, just follow us on social media at FISM News, or you can download the app right to your phone. Thanks so much. God bless, and we'll see you next week.